Right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and it's Monday. So before we get into today's episode, I know some of you are going to ask about fishing. Fishing was wholly unsuccessful, to be completely honest. The beach was absolutely packed. There was anglers all the way along it as far as the eye could see in both directions. And almost no one was catching anything, so something was definitely off and everyone was quite frustrated. Some of the lads we spoke to had come all the way from Wales, which was I think 5 or 6 hours drive, and then had an hour's walk to get down to this spot, only to not catch anything all day. So it wasn't quite as bad for me and my brother. We had quite a laugh, but it was very cold and it was wholly unsuccessful as we did not catch a single fish. But at least we did what we could. At least we kept trying, and it is what it is, right? Also, before we get into today's episode, I keep getting this question over and over again. Am I thinking that the all-time high or blow-off top for Bitcoin is before the end of the year, before the halving, or when? And I think this mostly pertains to the translation of a cycle. The translation of a cycle simply means whether the top for that cycle comes to the left or to the right of the halfway point. So if this is a cycle low right here, okay, and this is the next cycle low, this M represents the midpoint, halfway between these two, okay? So it doesn't matter if this is a daily cycle, a weekly cycle, or indeed a 4-year cycle, like for Bitcoin. If we go from a cycle low and we trend this way and we top to the right-hand side of the midpoint, yeah, past halfway, if we top somewhere, anywhere between, here and all the way up here, we top to the right-hand side of the halfway point, we call this a right translated cycle, decline into that cycle low and then go again, right? Conversely, if I come out of a cycle low like this, right, and we top anywhere before the midpoint of the cycle and then trend down for the remainder into the next cycle low like this, then we call this left translated. So the red one here is right translated, meaning the peak comes to the right-hand side of the halfway point, and the yellow one is left translated, meaning the peak for the cycle comes to the left-hand side of the midpoint. So then going back to this question, when is the Bitcoin cycle going to come to an end, and is it going to happen before the halving? To be really clear, I don't know. Okay, no one knows. No one knows when the top's going to come. But I think what these people are asking is, if we are going to have a left translated cycle, if we are going to have an early top, then does that come before the end of the year, before the halving, or when? And the simple answer, the short answer is, if it's a left translated cycle, that means, of course, the peak has to come before the halfway point, right? And the halfway point in a 4-year cycle is, of course, 2 years. So if 2 years from the 4-year cycle low, which was around the 15th or the 17th of November, 2 years on from the 15th of November 2022 is, of course, around the 15th of November 2024. That means if we're going to have a left translated or early top in the 4-year cycle, we should expect the top no later than around the 15th of November 2024. Now, keep in mind the cycles only tell us really in hindsight, right? They can give us an expectation, like, for example, I'm expecting if we continue to go up-only mode, then we will get an early top, and we'll have to call this a left-translated cycle. But that does not predict the top. Remember, the cycles predict the lows. We know the next 4-year cycle low will form 4 years after the prior one, okay? That's what the cycles tell us. That's the edge they give us. But in terms of where the top comes in, tops are wholly unreliable to use cycles, and that's why we use other strategies. I'm actually going to show you a nice setup for an exit strategy later in today's episode. So anyway, I hope that makes it clear. When? I have no idea. Neither do you. Neither does anyone. Anyone that tells you they do, just walk away, okay? That they're not worth their time or energy. Could it come before the end of this year? Yes. And then it would be heavily left translated, wouldn't it? Could it come right at the halving or around the halving? Yes. And then it would be slightly less left translated. Could it come right at the midpoint? Yes, of course. And then technically speaking, it would be mid translated. Or it could come slightly afterwards or a lot afterwards, and then, of course, it would be right translated. We don't know where the top's going to come, and that's why we don't rely on cycles to tell us when to exit the market. We only rely on cycles to tell us where to enter, and then we can use the cycles to give us the overall expected shape. So I hope that clears that up. Getting into today's episode, CPI is due on the 12th of December for the US, I think. I did get this open somewhere. Yeah, here you go. So December 12th. We're about 2.5 weeks away from the next CPI print. True inflation is back below 3. So that's nice to see. I'm not going to lie, this is kind of stickier than I'd like to see. I'd like to see this start to sharply roll over in the not too distant future. Otherwise, we could have a little bit of a problem. I do still expect this to continue down, but of course, if the market is going to prove us wrong on this, if it's going to continue to chop sideways or even increase, then we have to be open to flipping stances here. For now, though, I think there's plenty of time to see this metric continue to move down towards the lower twos. And so long as it is below the November's readout, then I think we still have plenty of space to see upside from the market. The Fed funds rate probabilities still sit well over 96% here, 96.8% probability that we will see a pause at the next FOMC. So everything is kind of aligning, right? You notice how the US CPI is due on the 12th, and then on the 13th, we got the rate hike decision. So I would expect CPI continues to come down. This continues to be a pause, and the market continues to rally into the end of the year. If we look at the credit spreads, something else I keep an eye on a lot, look, not breaking out, not speaking to a financially stressed type of environment like back here. So happy days. This is going to break out at some point, but it hasn't done so yet, right? Not to mention, the main message is don't get distracted, okay? Dollar liquidity is increasing and Bitcoin is going to continue to go up. Below is the chart of net reverse repo and the Treasury general account balance changes. Now, take a look at this, okay? Where's the liquidity going to come from, Camel? Where's the liquidity going to come from? It's coming from here, okay? And this is just one of a few places because the BTFP, the Bank Term Funding Program, another form of stealth QE, look at that, okay? Where's the liquidity going to come from? Let's play hide the bailout, okay? This is where instead of perform balance sheet expansion using the Fed balance sheet, we use the FDIC balance sheet instead. Why? Because there are less eyes on this. There we go, okay? Let's continue to play hide the bailout. Where's the liquidity going to come from? All of these stealth QE type of places. If you're still not convinced, okay, Black Friday shoppers spent a record 9.8 billion online in the US. So it begs the question, right? What recession? What recession? Of course, I still think there's going to be a recession next year. Okay, I haven't changed my mind. But for now, this feeds into that narrative of convincing everyone that the Fed has engineered a soft landing and we are going to see all-time highs for the stock market and everything looks okay just to force retail in at the top before everything comes tumbling down in that big deflationary bust. On the flip side, take a look at this Black Friday. This thing was indeed very, very wild. So the polar opposite to what we're seeing here. However, of course, this is from 2017. Speaking of polar opposites, did you notice that the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF could put severe downward pressure on the Bitcoin price, according to JP Morgan analyst? So there's that. And then on the flip side, we also had Samson Mao come out and say that he thinks upon approving the ETF, Bitcoin can reach $1 million just days or weeks after said approval. My interpretation of this is absolutely nobody knows, right? Absolutely nobody knows. And the best thing to do is continue to take this thing one day at a time. Remember, the charts don't lie. The charts are the truth. And speaking of the charts, history tends to repeat until proven otherwise. Something I say often, okay? Now, if we look back at history, what you'll notice is we had this sideways range, right? This sideways consolidation, a deviation followed by more range building. And what comes next is a massive parabolic advance. There was another example here, right? A deviation followed by a range break and a sideways consolidation. And of course, upon breaking this, we go into this huge parabolic advance. Fast forward to today, and what have we got? We've got this range, right? We've had the deviation, and now we're working on chopping around sideways before the expansion into a huge parabolic advance, which I think should take us to around 42K at least. We've got even more bullish TA, okay? Because this is the 1 month Arun up. And you can see in orange here, it's flattening off, just like it did all these prior times. Now you tell me what happens when it flattens off just like it's doing right now, okay? Just like it's doing right now. Take a good look at this. Usually, when this thing flattens off, we see parabolic advances for the price of Bitcoin. Is this time going to be different? I doubt it. I really, really doubt it. How many more of these charts are we going to show? And speaking of parabolas, this is exactly what I want to see, okay? This is exactly what I want to see. You can see it according to the schematic right here, okay? We have done base 1, 2, and 3. As you can see, base 1, 2, and 3. And here's the X marks the spot. Now at the X, it's reasonable to expect the price to double in the quickest amount of time, taking us from around 30 to around 60K before we build base 4, and then we put in that final blow off top move before the breakdown. Now the reason I say this is what everyone should be hoping for is this is the easiest way to exit near the top for any market. I have traded a bunch of parabolas, and believe me, if we are to get a blow off top like this, if we are to get a parabolic curve, then we will be able to exit right at the top. And it's very simple. I've shown this before. If you've been here before, you'll probably know what I'm going to do. You grab 3 trend lines, right? Here's one. So of course we could use this schematic for the base, but I don't like drawing parabolic curves because what you'll find is people just keep readjusting them over and over and over again. I much prefer to draw 3 trend lines, okay? So here's trend line 1. If we are indeed going to continue to go up only, then we're about to set trend line 2, something like this. And you'll notice, look, it touches here and it also touches right where base 4 comes into contact. Then we would draw yet another near vertical trend line like this connecting the upward price action, and upon breaking that trend line, just like we did in the oil short, remember, this is going to be a much bigger version if we get it in Bitcoin. But it's really no different here, right? You could argue there was probably one that comes back earlier on, first one, second one which is steeper, third one which is near vertical, and look, breakdown, retest, resumption, and that's how we got the top in oil, and that's how we remain short, having gotten out at the top, right? So we'll get a much bigger version in Bitcoin. As you can see, this could well be well into the six figures. This diagram here suggests around $210,000, and notice where the date is as well. This right here is 2024 if I do in a straight line here, and this right here is March of 2024. So going back to this idea of it seeing a left translated cycle top, if this thing is to play out, then we are going to see the top come in right around the time of the halving. And I would wager that we possibly get ETF approval here. This is what I would think. ETF approval here, right? It becomes a brief sell the news instance. Then we blow off, and then we get the halving. Everyone thinks this is a post-halving sell-off, but it actually marks the top, and we go left translated. That's how I think we mark the top. That's how I think we harm the most amount of market participants. That's how I think we trap everyone that's waiting for a standard 4-year cycle top. But as ever, one day at a time. Like I said, the thing everyone wants to be hoping and praying for, whether you're a champion of seeing an early top or whether you want the top to come in and you're a champion of the standard 4-year cycle shape with the top coming in much later, you should still want a parabolic blow off top, because these are the easiest ways to get out. Like I said, you need a trend line here. Okay, we've already set that one. Then you need a second one here, which arguably we've already set given this touch here. We just need to confirm it by moving up and touching it once more. And then, like I said, you draw one final trend line and sell the breakdown, just like I did with oil. So anyway, that is that. Overall, bullish as a son of a gun, right? I still can't find a bearish chart. I can find plenty of people that look at the price chart and then just draw an arbitrary squiggle like this. And they go, 12K comes next. But like I say, show me an actual chart. People are quite quick to come out and say things like, oh, what are you smoking? But when I ask them, okay, provide me with some data. Give me a rationale for why you think I'm wrong. They, of course, can't answer. They can't back up what they have to say. The thing remains bullish, and I continue to expect continuation of the bullishness out of Bitcoin. So in no particular order, here's the oil. Okay, short and strong, continue to push. Don't really have anything else to say about that. Dollar continues to come off, doesn't it? And the 10-year yields continuing to work on a back test of the resistance line now. It was support, now resistance before we get that rollover. Coin false breakout, so still working on a potential move to the upside, but of course the closer we get to this cycle low, then the more likely it is we're going to have a pullback first. Overall, we're still more or less keeping pace with this parabola, so unless this breaks, then this continues to be the base case here. Gold has finally cleared its local high cluster from back here, so this is now a new confirmed cycle. This is now bullish, and it's probably targeting the top of this range. As I've been saying over and over again, I don't care what happens in here. We call all of this move happy days. I'll be buying the all-time high break if we get it, and then we should get a nice 50% move pretty quickly thereafter. Take a look at silver, right into resistance. If it can break out of here, then this has to be a long from me, and I think a snap to $30 comes very quickly. I think what will happen is we'll get some breakout like this, quick snap to $30, some kind of consolidation, and then it will probably run all the way to $50 before it gets a significant correction. So the first thing we got to do is see it break out of here, but if it can do that, that is going to be a long from me. I will probably add the silver miners as well, but I want to see the silver miners break out of this outside downward sloping blue one. So I'm going to line this one up, consider this a call out. I will be getting long silver miners if we can do something like this. If we can get a breakout of here, then that'll be a long from me. Other than that, not a great deal has changed since, of course, it is Monday morning. Taking a quick look at the stock market, just to reiterate this important point, we are expecting a pullback into a half cycle low any day now before resumption of this trend, and we get that bigger move down into the next 40-day cycle low for the S&P 500. Today is going to be day 20. We would usually expect to see a day 20 or 21 half cycle low shakeout. So I expect to see this Monday or Tuesday. And then, like I said, hopefully we can continue this uptrend before we pull back into that next cycle low due around the 22nd of December. So I think we got a good shot here at running much higher. Although, as I've been saying over and over again, some level of little shakeout, pullback, or consolidation is probably reasonable to expect for all these indexes. But in the meantime, welcome to the week. I hope you're doing well in life. I'm sure this week is going to be fabulous. And until next time, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.